So welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the another webinar in our series on Students' Pathway to Success, a Faculty Guide. I'm Sam Edelman from the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I will be your host for this session. So Students' Pathway to Success was a publication created by top 40 faculty in 2015, and it's really it's an online instructional guide to help first-year and transfer students succeed. And I will post a link to this in the chat as we go along. So just a few housekeeping items. If you have any sound problems, use the audio check. If you have any other kind of technical issues during the session, please call WebEx support toll-free at 866-229-3239. And if you need to leave the session temporarily in the emoticons menu, please go ahead and just find the coffee cup to let us know that you've stepped away temporarily from your computer. And just a few other guidelines. If you have any questions and you have a mic, please feel free to click the hand raise icon and ask your question, or at any time you can type comments and questions into the chat. We are recording this session, and we will post and send the recording link next week. So now I'd like to present your presenters. So the chapter in the book that we're going to be focusing on today is student feedback, and we have two presenters. First up will be Diane Cassidy from the Computer Science Department, and then Desiré Taylor from the Department of Mathematics and Statistics. So I'm going to turn this over to Diane.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Can hear you fine.
Okay, awesome. Hi, I'm Diane Cassidy from the Computer Science Department. When Desiree and I worked on this, we felt that this was a very important topic because feedback is designed to help our students grow in their learning and in their becoming a professional, whatever their field. The idea of feedback, research has shown that students generally don't care a lot about feedback. They look at the bottom line. They're interested mostly in their grade. But we have found over the many years of teaching that if feedback is done consistently and correctly, it is designed to help foster growth. And in so doing, we believe that it is a necessary component of the educational process. If you look at the chapter, I'll open with the opening statement that we have. Feedback is essential for both students and instructors in cultivating healthy habits.
Diane?
You know what? Yeah, this has to move.
You need to click above the slides. There's a tab that says Student Feedback.
I don't see it. There we go. Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay. I'm sorry. This slide here talking about the opening, why it is important. I'm going to jump down a little bit here. It's important for instructors to use feedback to identify and communicate to the students what they have mastered and what they need to learn. There are many different kinds of feedback. We are not here to advise you necessarily how to give the feedback, but we're here to offer ideas as to what kinds of feedback are there and why each is important, and possibly give you a little pointers to help you think about how it works best for you. We have content and behavioral feedback. We talk about what are they learning with respect to the content of the course, and also their behavior. And that's an important thing, too, because we are, theoretically anyway, developing professionals. We have written and oral. We have immediate and delayed. Sometimes it's right away. Sometimes they have to wait. More often than not, they have to wait. Qualitative and quantitative. Tell me what I'm doing, and a sensory approach, and also a numerical. And how much, when, and where, and why, and all of the good adverbs. If we take a look at content feedback, the most immediate, the most common, the one the students look for the most is their grade. It's generally the most watched form of feedback that students take. It's a quantitative measure of the mastery of the material. Without the finer points, however, we find students just focus on that bottom line, on that grade, and that's not sufficient to help them grow. Next, we look at critiques or analyses, which is more detailed feedback. It's more qualitative in design, and the depth and the breadth of this feedback is determined by the assignment itself and the needs of the assignment, the objectives of the assignment. Content feedback. When giving content feedback, it's very important to maintain clarity, consistency, and completeness. And as far as consistency, I'd like to put an aside here. Students will share. I know with verbal, we protect our students' grades and their information very strongly, but students don't. They will share things with others, and if you're not consistent, they will find out. If you give a grade to someone and allow something to pass, it'll happen that they'll find out and you'll have problems. So be consistent. Feedback should foster growth. If you're looking at writing, for example, growth as a writer. So by just telling them a grade, it's not helping them understand what they can do to improve or what they've done right. Grading writing or written feedback, it should include technical aspects as well as content. For example, I remember in grade school, or in high school rather, just spelling count was always the question. Well, spelling always counts. If you're writing and you're presenting yourself as a professional, this is important as well. Pardon me. Behavior feedback, like I said before, professionalism is part of our goal as educators, not just to give them the knowledge in their discipline, but also how to present themselves and behave as a professional. When giving behavior feedback, we need to consider the whole person. We share our content expertise in our discipline, be it computer science, math, or whatever, but we also should serve as a mentor, guiding them to become a professional member of the field. In order for students to give us what it is we're looking for, we need to communicate those expectations. And if we set those and communicate those from the beginning, at the very outset of the course, it makes it a lot easier for us to maintain our expectations and for them to follow them. If they know what they're getting into from the beginning, they're more likely to give it to us. So how do we communicate our expectations? Well, the first way, of course, is the course syllabus. And I know there are many instructors that give a syllabus test to make sure that their students read it. And my experience has shown me that they just look it up. Well, I guess that's better than not reading it at all, but it needs to be there. You need to spell out your expectations from the beginning so that it is clear and they do have a reference point. Keep in mind, however, a syllabus is a work in progress. The longer you teach, the more you will see this to be true. Situations arise, and that will warrant the addition of something else in your syllabus. Grading rubrics, I think, are wonderful. Let students know exactly how they will be graded, no surprises at the end. I generally provide them, particularly with my writing classes, tell them exactly what I'm going to be grading them on, and that's a reference point to them so that they can double check themselves before they submit the assignment. Emails, we have many students, and we have great enthusiasm, but managing those students, those emails, and balancing that enthusiasm when we have a great shortness of time makes it very difficult. So there are some parameters that can be set in order to keep this flowing more smoothly. For example, if you have a seated class and you have regular office hours, you might opt to tell your students, no, I will not answer email. If you have a question, come see me before or after class, ask it during class, or come see me during office hours. Generally, however, that does not work entirely. There are times that a student needs to communicate with you via email, regardless of the class setup. In order to maintain some sense of order, if you require a specific subject line, such as the name of the course, as in the example here, it should be LBST 1100, that helps you readily identify your emails as coming from a student. If you have multiple sections, you can even require that they put the section number in there so that you know right away you can prioritize the email that's come into your inbox. Turnaround time. When will you respond? Will you answer emails at night, on weekends? Can they expect an answer within 6 hours, 24, 48, 2 weeks, whatever? But let them know and try to stick to this. I know it's difficult given the volume that we get, but set out your expectations. Students tend to think because in this day of electronics, they can have immediate feedback. So it's important to set those parameters from the beginning. But what's also important is make sure that you respond. Oral communication can be done in the classroom. For example, if the student is giving a presentation, you could give immediate feedback there. You can also give feedback on the oral presentation after it's finished. You can also just, by moderating questions, answering questions, provide oral feedback. Office hours is another form of oral feedback. For example, when students come to see you, it provides the student and the instructor an opportunity to get to know each other better. And I think this is very important because as students get older, they approach senior year, you might often be asked to provide a letter of recommendation, and it's difficult to do if you don't really know the student. Office hours also provides an opportunity for tutoring or one-on-one instruction. Now, I put the word tutoring in single quotes so that I make it clear that I'm not saying you should do a tutoring session for each of your students, because if you do that, they won't come to class, they'll come to you. But on the other hand, there are times when a student will struggle and needs a little bit more detailed explanation, and you can provide that during office hours. For those of us who have TAs or graders, they can also be required to have office hours to provide that kind of assistance. Desiré, did you want to pick up from here?
Yes, I will go ahead and pick up from here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So I looked at some of the more detailed aspects of feedback. Specifically, one of the first things we looked at was the timing of the feedback. And so, of course, we're looking at immediate feedback and delayed feedback. Both have their advantages and their disadvantages. We need to keep in mind the size of our classes. It's becoming the norm at our university. The class sizes are becoming larger and larger, and that makes it very difficult to give immediate feedback. But thinking about immediate feedback, it is timely. In either case, timely feedback is very important to student success. Our feedback needs to be given in time so that students can use that feedback to make a change in their study habits, to possibly make a difference in the outcome of the course. So immediate feedback would include things like use of clickers, perhaps quizzes in class that we use trade and grade, or even self-graded quizzes, just to give students that immediate sense of do you or do you not understand the concept before we move on. And I would like to talk a little bit more about clickers on the next slide, but before I do, of course, the disadvantage of this immediate assessments is that they may not give a whole lot of detail. They may not always be completely reliable. And then, of course, you may not be able to really calculate those into the course grade, or at least it should be a small part of the grade, because I think grade that grade loses some of its meaning by being calculated so quickly. So I have used clickers in my classroom, and I really do love clickers. The advantage of clickers for me, I found to be the benefit of recording attendance, not only once, but multiple times during a lecture. So this keeps a student from, for instance, learning that his or her instructor takes attendance at the beginning of the class. They may come in, stay for the first 15 minutes, and then leave. In addition to recording attendance multiple times per lecture, you are recording whether a student is mentally present. So if you're lying on your arm sleeping, even if you're physically there, you're required to participate in the classroom if you're going to be required to answer questions throughout the lecture. It reduces time spent in grading in-class assignments. Clickers are great in helping even give tests. Its grades are collected electronically and can immediately be uploaded to your Canvas page. So it is really a very quick grade. It provides immediate detailed feedback. Now, especially in mathematics, when I teach a concept, it is important for me to make sure that my students understand that concept before I move on to the next. So it's important for them to know whether they understand the concept or not, but it's also important for me. It lets me know, should I move on, or should I maybe do one more example of this particular topic before I move on. So that immediate feedback, even for me, allows me to adjust my lectures to make sure that my students get the most out of it. Clickers allows instructors to prepare questions either ahead of time and present it to their class in PowerPoint format, or it allows you to make up questions as you go during the lecture. And then again, it forces that active student participation during the lecture. All right, so that's my bit on selling you guys on clickers. Let's look at delayed feedback. So delayed feedback, in my opinion, is and can be a little bit more meaningful, typically given on homework, tests, projects, and of course is always critical to the learning process. Right. So the format of this feedback is very situational dependent. I understand that the way feedback is given in a math class is completely different than how feedback will be given in a history class or how feedback will be given in an English class. So it truly just depends on the topic. In some cases, verbal feedback is appropriate. It's great because it gives the benefit of two-way communication. The student and the instructor can both participate in a conversation. It can also be beneficial to other participants if this was a group project, or if it is a case where verbal feedback can be given in a group situation. Other students can gather and can learn something from that feedback. It is important to note, though, that with verbal feedback, as is the case with any feedback, but especially in the case of verbal, that we have to remain aware of confidentiality. We have some FERPA laws at UNC Charlotte, and we have to be sensitive when giving public feedback. So the nonverbal feedback, of course, again, given on grades and assignments. This can be given as posted grades or posted comments. We can and should provide, like Diane had said before, a comprehensive rubric before the assignment, maybe in conjunction with a detailed solution key after the assignment to help students understand how their grade was calculated, what they could have done better, and to help them learn from the mistakes that they have made. We have at UNC Charlotte, we have Moodle right now. We are moving over to Canvas, which allows us to use the online gradebook, which is great because we can update that daily or weekly, and students always have access to their grade, and they can have that immediate feedback as soon as those grades are posted. Something else that I have started using that I find to be very, very useful in very large sections is using the Excel mail merge feature to send individual messages to students. So this allows you to basically set up an Excel file where, of course, in one of the columns you have the student's email address. I typically do this after each test. I will not only send students the grade that they made on that test, but I will also remind them and give an update on their class average so far. I also go as far as to do a class rank for each student, and then you can easily just sort by grade, and then for each 5% increment, I also post a message for students, either praising them for doing really well and giving them that positive feedback, to encouraging students who are not doing as well. And then, of course, students who are in the failing range usually will get a message from me asking them to set up a meeting with me, encouraging them to go to tutoring or find some extra help. And I have actually found that this was one of the most useful things, because the way that the Excel mail merge works, it really individualizes that email to each student. Students are under the impression that I wrote that email just for them, so they tend to really respond to that, especially the students who have encouraged to seek help typically will email me and say, oh, I'm sorry I disappointed you, what can I do? So I found that to be a really, really helpful tool also. It could be important, like I had just said, this ties in nicely with the previous slide, to help students interpret the feedback. Many students think that really it is okay to make a C in a class. Many students shoot for a C. They think that that's okay. Maybe by letting students know that, you know, in this class, again, I will use my discipline as an example. I teach Calculus 1 and Calculus 2. And data shows that students that earn a C in Calculus 1 will not pass Calculus 2. So helping students understand what their grade means is also very, very helpful. In addition to that, we can provide scatter plots for grades that we give. For instance, if all of our students took a test, we can afterwards provide a scatter plot of all of the grades earned in class so that students can see their own class standing. And of course, again, we can create a type of a feedback chart, whether it's formal or informal, to let students know what their grade means. Should it be a concern? Is it a good grade? Is it a bad grade? And what should they do? If your grade is below a certain point, what can you do to improve that grade? Again, speaking of the large class sizes that we have to be realistic on how we can handle grades. It's a great idea. Of course, the more feedback we give, the better it is for students, but we have to be realistic. It is a very time-consuming activity for instructors, so planning is key. Most departments will provide graders, especially in some of the large lectures. I think that it is important to meet with graders, make sure that they understand the content, and make sure that, especially at the beginning of the semester, that the graders do the job properly. Again, use electronic aids such as the Excel mail merge that we just talked about, or email. Make use of a Canvas gradebook. And then one additional thing that I wanted to put in here that I think also helps is providing students with a grade sheet at the start of the semester and requiring them to keep track of their own grade as an ongoing assignment. I think this is paramount, putting this responsibility back into the lap of students, for them to know what their grade is in class and to keep track of the feedback and to hold them responsible for it. So I've actually put a sample of this in here. This is a grade sheet that I use in my class, and this is an ongoing assignment. At any point in class, I can ask my students to please submit a copy of this. It will be graded. And so this is a detailed sort of system that they can write down their own grades. I think even even a freshman student should be able to use this grade sheet to continuously find their average in the class and know exactly where they stand with this grade. So this is great also to require this of students, and I have found that this was really, really helpful also. All right, so I don't know if Diane wants to join me in the conclusion, but again, that it is common sense for students to have some preconceived expectation of feedback. Oftentimes the expectation will be that feedback at the college level will be similar to what they've received in high school. And so it is important for us to communicate specifically what the requirements of our course will be, and emphasis on reminding them of their responsibility in accessing their feedback. All right, any questions?
Okay, well, if there aren't any questions, then I would just like to thank Diane and Desiré. for your presentation. And since we're getting close to lunchtime, I would like to offer, I'd like to just remind people about some of our upcoming webinars. So you can see we have one on February 22nd on refreshing research assignments, on March 1st using podcasting as a writing tool. March 14th is the final in our series about teaching online, and this was on enhancing interaction in your online course. And finally, next month on March 24th, we will have the next webinar in our series from the book, the faculty guide, on learning how to learn. So please look for those, and you can, if there are any that you find interesting, please go ahead and register for them. And I am going to put the link to the actual online guide, so you'll have it here if you want to look at it. And there it is. And then finally, since we are getting close to lunch, I would just like to offer everybody a virtual dessert. So please go ahead, if you want to share in the chat which is your favorite dessert, please feel free to do that. And I would just say that these are real. A few years ago, I was at a conference out in Vancouver, and I came across a dessert cafe called, of course, Death by Chocolate. So anyway, just wanted to share that with you. So finally, thank you again for attending, and this session has been recorded, and I will send out a link to the recording next week. So thanks, everybody.